Okay, this section is 5.15, 5.15. This is sustainable agriculture. So this is the last thing we're going to look at really in agriculture before we move on to some other things. We're going to look at how do you farm and grow food sustainably. We're going to look at traditional versus conventional farming. So these are all techniques that would lend themselves to be more sustainable in a long-term system than maybe some conventional farming. Okay, what is the goal of sustainable agriculture? The goal here is to feed the world's population, but we want to do that without destroying the land, polluting the environment, or reducing biodiversity. So we're going to need to figure out a way to do this. This is not easy. We need to fulfill our need for food. We need to all the time enhance our soil quality instead of degrade it. We want to minimize our use of non-renewable resources, but we want this to be economically viable for the farmer and for it to work for people who are doing farming as a living and a job. This is going to require more labor than some other techniques if we want to do this sustainably with the future in mind. Okay, what are some practices that we can do in sustainable agriculture? The first thing we're going to look at here is our soil. So we want to conserve our soil. So there's many different ways you can do this. We want to prevent erosion, and so we want to work with the soil and the land as it is. So this is a very interesting thing that we can do called contour plowing. We're going to plow and we're going to harvest along the contours of our land. So you can see that there's a farm here on the top of a hill, and the farmer has made the fields go in the contours of the hill instead of working against the land, and that helps with erosion and that helps with all kinds of saving of our soil. I could use windbreaks. What's a windbreak? You can see in the picture here, I've got trees and shrubs planted in between my fields. So these are hedgerows or rows of trees around the edge of your field. It's going to provide wind protection and shelter from erosion. So see, I could have a lot of erosion coming from wind or water. And what's going to happen here is these trees and shrubs are going to protect my crops from that. So that's called a windbreak. I can plant perennial crops. Here's an example, an artichoke. Some crops come back year after year after year, and I don't have to reseed them. I don't have to replant them. They don't require plowing every year or herbicides or anything like that. So if I take care of the soil, I can have this one crop like these artichokes, and they can come back every year, and I can just amend as I need to and move on from there. Now, not every crop is perennial, so we can't do that for everything, but this is a good option if you can find it. And then I can do terracing. So this is what this is this different from contour plowing. This is a series of wide, flat steps that's on a slope. So here I am trying to farm on a hill or a mountain. That's pretty hard to do. I'm going to have a lot of erosion, a lot of water loss. So I have manipulated the land a little bit here, but what I've made is some steps. And now I can water on little flat sections, and I can farm places where we thought were too hilly before, but we can use these areas anyway if we do the terracing. And then I can have no-till agriculture. So what are the benefits of this? What is no-till? I think we watched a video before, you watched a video before on no-till versus moldboard plowing. And this is when I'm not going to till up the soil with heavy machinery every year. And I'm just going to kind of leave it as it is, and I'm going to plant. So what's the benefit of doing this? I don't have as much erosion, because when I pull up that soil with heavy machinery, some of it's going to wash off and then it's going to erode. So I've got less erosion with no-till. And then when I don't overturn that soil all the time, I'm going to have less oxidation. This is chemistry here, and less production of CO2 as I'm not moving that soil around. The drawback here is I'm going to probably have more weeds because I'm not pulling up that soil and turning it over and getting rid of those weed seeds, and they're probably going to come up more often. So I might have to use more herbicides on my field here if I don't do the tilling. So there is advantages and disadvantages to no-till agriculture, but it is a way to protect the soil. Now I can also do strip cropping. So see what's going on in this picture here. I'm planting two things together that work really well together. So corn needs a lot of nitrogen, and peas here in the middle, they fix nitrogen. So that's great. So if I have my peas in between my corn plants, then that's going to be actually adding nitrogen to the soil naturally and helping that soil out, and then the corn will be using it. So they're working together, and that's all good. Okay, what about soil fertility? So not only do I want to protect the soil, but I want to protect the fertility of the soil and how many nutrients it has and what's going on in there. So here's some ways I can do that. Crop rotation. We talked about this before, but I can move my crops around and I can remember from one year to the next, where did I put the peas and the beans and the edamame and the lettuce and all those things. And then I'm going to see what works well from one year to the next. So if I rotate those crops around, my soil is not going to be so demanded upon for one type of nutrient every single year in a row. And so I'm going to prepare my soil for the next crop. This promotes synergy, like peas first and then corn. Just like we had the peas and the corn next to each other in the previous slide, I could do peas first and then I could do corn. And the peas are going to basically prepare my soil for the corn. So that's good. I could use green manure. What is that? Animal and plant waste as fertilizer instead of synthetic artificial fertilizer. So this is a kind of cool thing you could do. You could you could make manure tea. So I'm going to add animal droppings to water and I'm going to stir it every day and I'm going to wait until it's ready and then it's going to make my own fertilizer basically that I could put on my plants. So that is a way to improve fertility of the soil. And this shows you here which animal waste is safe to use. So you don't want to use cat and dog, maybe pig, but horse, cow, chicken, rabbit, goat, and sheep, those are all good. So if you had access to any of those waste products from those animals, then you could make your own tea that would be natural fertilizer. I can use limestone in my soil if I want to neutralize the acidic soil. So I think we looked at this before when you did the soil chemistry lab, and you looked at how can we fix acidic soil if the pH is wrong. So the limestone will help my soil take up nutrients more efficiently. It's going to restore that pH balance and it's going to make all the nutrients more available to the soil, which is going to make it more fertile all the way around. And then I could do rotational grazing. So what is this? You saw this in the end of the Meat Hooked video with Joel Salatin and his Polyface Farms in Virginia. So he does this very same thing. We have our animals on one pasture and then we move them to a second one and a third one and a fourth one. And all the while that the animals are not on those other pastures, those pastures are having a chance to recover. And they're growing more plants and the soil is being protected and not always overgrazed. And that is a way of just improving the overall fertility of the soil by not having the animals in the same place all of the time. That's called rotational grazing. Oh, this is kind of explaining that a little more detail. So what this is going to be showing is different pastures. Large pastures are broken into sections. The paddocks that are not being grazed are left to restore themselves for like 20 or 35 days, 25 to 30 days. Allows my plant life to come back, allows the roots to go deeper, draw more nutrients from the soil, and then that's going to make my livestock a little healthier. I'm not going to have as many diseases. It says pastured animals are less susceptible to different diseases like pink eye and worms and things like that. So all of this is good for the animals and also good for the soil and the grass. Okay, so if I'm going to be sustainable here, I could choose to do organic agriculture. That's one thing I could do. I could use no synthetic pesticides or fertilizers, and I might try to get my farm certified organic. It takes a little while to do this, and it takes a good amount of paperwork. And I think you have to be growing organically for 2 or 3 years before you can get it certified. But you can see that people go to the grocery store, and sometimes they want to choose what's labeled as an organic food, and the market for that has gone way up. This is a graphic showing you 1997 to 2009, but I'm sure it's gone up even since then. This was part of the 1990 Farm Bill, Organic Foods Production Act. Sometimes the labor costs for organic food can be high, but you can sell foods and vegetables for a little bit higher price when you do it organically. And what you're telling your consumer is that you have not used any synthetic pesticides or fertilizers, and so they don't have to worry so much about eating Roundup or any of those things that might be on their food. That's an herbicide, not a pesticide, but same type of thing. Okay, how has organic agriculture grown? The sales have grown 266% since 2002. We've got a lot more organic farms here, 136% increase. Different organic certifications have also gone up, and you can see in the total acres of organic production in the world, it's gone up quite a bit. So it's showing you here lots of people are trying to do this and are certifying their farms and telling people that they've got organic produce. That makes it to your supermarket, and you can look for this organic section in Harris Teeter or wherever you go, and you will see sometimes fruits and vegetables that don't look absolutely perfect or giant or anything, but they haven't had those terrible pesticides applied to them. So that might be something that you would like to look for. What is another way I could do some sustainable agriculture? I can do free range beef and chicken instead of CAFOs. So we talked about the CAFOs. We looked at the pasturing. What is the benefit of doing what's called free range? It's pretty ethical and humane treatment of the animals as long as they're not caged up. They are left to do a more natural life cycle for themselves. We don't need as many antibiotics, medications for them. We don't use as much fossil fuel use, and we recycle our animal waste back into the land. Like you saw on Mr. Salatin's farm, the cows poop on the pasture, the chickens come and they pick the bugs out of it and they restore all that into the land, and that's a nicely integrated system. What are the drawbacks of doing my free range beef and chicken? It's a great idea, but it requires so much land and the costs are much higher. So if you look at this overall, it's really hard to figure out how we're going to get enough land if we wanted to raise all our cows and chickens and things like that on pasture rather than a CAFO. We just don't have enough land. So that's a drawback there. So those are some facts about sustainable agriculture, some ways we can do it, lots of different ways we can integrate that along with integrated pest management in the future. And the goal is here to be able to feed everybody, but still sustainably take care of the land so that in the future we have not used it up and we still have it in order to grow food for people everywhere.